microphone, but I'm feeling it today. All right. How is everyone doing today? My name is Francesca here with FlavoredVivid. This is Star in the background, very appropriately, with our astrology reading. We are going to go over all of the major planetary transits, which planets are transitioning into different signs, as well as retrograde here that are going to be impacting all rising signs. So you got to know your rising sign for this. You can go off of your sun sign if that is what is resonating, but for the most accurate interpretation of this, it is going to be via the rising sign, because I'm going to be breaking it down by house system. So what house is going to be impacted by these transits for you guys? All right. So let's just do a little intro of what planets we're going to be touching on here. I'm going to be touching on Mars. I know the retrograde did start in December, but we are still in the beginning of January going through a Mars retrograde, and it did officially move into the sign of Cancer on the 6th of January. So we will be dealing with this Mars retrograde all the way until February 23rd of 2025, but it will continue in direct motion through Cancer all the way until April 30th of 2025. So there's going to be another 2-month period of Mars in Cancer. I'm going to be doing timestamps for this video as well once I actually post this. So if you want to skip to your particular zodiac sign, you can always do that if you already are aware of how long each transit is going to take. Another major transit that we do have here is we do have the North Node and South Node officially moving into the Pisces Virgo axis, and this is going to be starting on January 11th, and that will be about 18 months. Venus is going to be starting a retrograde in Pisces on February 29th here, and then it is going to it's going to be starting in Aries. It's going to be starting in Aries and then retrograde back into Pisces. So we're going to have a little bit of duality here with Venus, and that's going to be roughly starting March 1st all the way until April. Saturn is going to be entering the sign of Aries this year, which is going to be a 3-year transit. It's going to have a couple retrogrades along the way. But this initial one is going to be going back and forth between Pisces and Aries. And then we have Neptune officially entering the sign of Aries this year as well, and that's going to be on March 30th. This is going to be a 14-year cycle, so we had a lot of energy in the previous house with Neptune involved, which I'll go into individually for each sign. But we do have Neptune moving into Aries, then it will go into a retrograde back into Pisces just for a little bit before it goes direct again. And there will be multiple retrogrades as Neptune is going to be in Aries for the next 14 years. But this is just the first one as it's switching between signs. And so when you're switching between signs with the retrograde, it does kind of muddle the energy a little bit instead of it being a consistent sign throughout the entirety of its retrograde. Jupiter is going to be entering Cancer on June 9th of 2025, which I'm really excited for my Cancer risings here. You guys are going to have a really great time of it when Jupiter is in Cancer, because it's going to be shining down that positivity exclusively on your first house. So the first house of self. And Jupiter transits are about a year. So it's going to be in the sign of Cancer for a year, all the way until June 30th of 2026. And then Uranus is another big transit that we're doing and having a transition from sign to sign. It's been in Taurus for roughly about the last 7 years, and we will be moving into Gemini. Yes, Jupiter returned for Cancer risings as well. Or I'm sorry, for those with natal Jupiter. Natal Cancer in Jupiter will be a Jupiter return. Anyways, but Uranus is going to be transitioning into the sign of Gemini instead of the sign of Taurus, which will happen on July 7th of 2025, and it's going to be all the way through until August 2032. Oh my gosh, I gotta slow down. I'm getting tongue twisters here. But those are roughly the dates here that we have for these transits. We're just going to be touching on the 2025 impact that we will be having here. And that being said, let us start off with Aries rising. And then we'll be going chronologically in house order. So Taurus next, then Gemini, and so on and so forth. So with this Mars retrograde, it is going to be oscillating, of course, natively from your 5th house, Leo in your 5th house, to Cancer in your 4th house. We're not going to touch on Leo in the 5th because we've already expanded past that point. But we are currently having it impacting your 4th house for Aries rising here, which is energetic shifts to family and emotional security. It's a time to focus on creating a supportive home environment. You might have a lot of instances where family becomes more apparent to you, or your roots, or your home in general. Maybe you're having issues at home. Maybe, you know, your pipes are bursting, or there could be something that you need to take care of at home in order to prevent some kind of conflict later on, further down the road. And the other thing here too, and this is going to be generally for all of us, but when Mars is in the sign of Cancer, a lot of the times there can be a lot of emotional aggression that is coming through. So with this hitting your 4th house, it might be that there are some subconscious underlying issues that are kind of being brought to the forefront here, that are kind of inspiring you in a way to take action. And I don't mean that necessarily in the most healthy way. I mean it in the sense that maybe your subconscious mind is controlling how you move via your emotions. So there may be a level of like emotional manipulation within yourself that you kind of need to like take a look at and pull the blinders off so that you can approach things appropriately and not take it out on people around you. So there's a call to basically slow down, to don't be so reactive towards things. A lot of the time with Aries risings, you can act first and ask questions later, but here it's really giving you this opportunity to kind of push on the brakes before you make emotional decisions, or react out of volatility because you might be emotionally triggered in something. So that is a little bit of what you might experience while your 4th house is activated by Mars. You have to remember that Mars is the planet of war, aggression, irritation. It's also your sex drive as well. So when it's in a retrograde, it's kind of like this reflective energy that we're getting as we're, you know, trying to figure out what we're doing here and how our energy is being affected while Mars is entering your 4th house. So not only are the North Node and South Node respectively moving into Pisces and Virgo, but we have a new eclipse cycle that is coming through. I did talk about this a little bit in my last 2025 video. But with this, there is going to be an impact immediately on your North Node in the 12th house and your South Node in the 6th house. So kind of as I was talking about like the subconscious patterns and programming that is kind of being brought to the surface with this Mars retrograde, your North Node being in the 12th house of Pisces here, that is, the 12th house is literally the house of the subconscious. It's also a high impact on your dreams. You might have a lot of psychic epiphanies or downloads from your dreams during this eclipse season. You might honestly it almost like have like an aha moment, because a lot of the times with eclipse energy and the North Node and South Node in general, there can be a huge and what feels like sudden shift in energies. So really pay attention to your dreams for the next 18 months. Anyone that is getting impacted in their 12th house here with the North Node in Pisces and the eclipses, I'm letting them know that you need to keep a dream journal for sure and work on those psychic gifts and abilities that may have been kind of dormant and left beneath the surface here. It also could be your intuition is, really jump starting, and you're starting to lean into those gifts that have like I said, have always kind of been there. There is this call for there to be a level of compassion and understanding here, especially with Aries risings. Hello. Sometimes, once again, like Aries can, especially with an Aries rising, it can be that you are very centrally focused, like you focus more on what your own personal needs and desires are. But with this call to the 12th and 6th house axis, it's kind of to like pull yourself out of your individual perspective and to look at the higher perspective and look how your actions can impact other people. And there's also a call here when impacting the 12th house that it is a deep period of spiritual work for you, and also surrender. And of course, Aries kind of like to grab the bull by the horns and make their own future and fortune and path for them, which there's a way that you can still take leadership and agency of your own life while having a level of surrender in that as well. So there's a collective calling for you to let go of control and to embrace a period of solitude and healing within yourself. When oscillating in your 6th house here with Virgo in the 6th house, you are called to release your perfectionistic tendencies in daily routines and work environments as well. So you may have some tests or opportunities, I would say, for you to expand past what your old programming was around your work environment. And maybe that could also be that you've outgrown whatever previous work that you've done before, and you're really stepping into a new line of work that may be a little bit more challenging. Maybe it's going from, you know, the daily work routine, the 9-to-5 grind in the 6th house, and then you're stepping into something a little bit more spiritual or something a little bit more aligned or fulfilling for you while your North Node is in the 12th house here. So let's move on to Saturn here, which Saturn is going, when Saturn enters Aries, it is going to be in your 1st house here. Currently, Saturn has been in your 12th house, also kind of like that call to spiritual action, right? And when Saturn is in Pisces, where it has been stationed for you for the last few years, there can a lot of times be a stripping away of your previous spiritual beliefs or any kind of like spiritual disillusionment that you might have. Or it can even be just like the start of your dark night of the soul with Saturn in Pisces. So there can be a lot of difficult spiritual lessons that you've been overcoming, Aries, and you know, maybe you've already kind of started this deep dive into something a little bit more mystical for you. But with Saturn moving into Aries in the 1st house, impacting your 1st house, it's going to be like a call to action here. Now that you've done a lot of like the spiritual regression and looking at your shadow and looking at things a little bit differently and leaning more into your intuition instead of the physical world, it's like you integrating and embodying those lessons and then taking leadership and agency kind of in your life, which is a little bit of what I talked about earlier here, right? We will have a period where we have Saturn retrograding back into Pisces, and I feel like that's going to be here for you, impacting your 12th house, to just wrap up any of the loose ends that maybe have been left for you to clear up. Anything that feels unfinished while Saturn was in Pisces. So you might see a continuity there of old themes or patterns, or maybe even people that have shown up for you while Saturn was in Pisces. You might see the conclusion of that for yourself. But it could be like, oh, I thought that I was finished with this, or that I learned this lesson. And it's not necessarily that you did anything wrong. It's just that retrograde energy is then still embodying your 12th house. So you could see those potential endings there, like and it might feel like that final ending, conclusive ending for you. Karmic patterns and unresolved fears surface for closure here. So it can really feel like those last critical degrees with Pisces in the 12th house really having an impact on you. At the same time, we do have, not at the same time, but Neptune is also going to be moving into Aries, which impacts your 1st house, and it's the same story here. So Neptune deals a lot with potential illusions, deceptions, personal deceit, imprisonment, a lot of the times, whether that be spiritually, physically, emotionally, whatever the case may be there for you. On the higher vibration, it also deals with a lot of beauty and art and community and almost like a spin-off of Venusian energy, because Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. So with that being said, there could have been like, while Neptune has been stationed in your 12th house in Pisces for like the last 14 years or so, it might have really felt like things just never ended for you. Like there was never a clear ending for anything, or like you were always going through and dealing with the same problems over and over and over again, or it's like you couldn't seem to have any sense of moving forward, almost like you were spinning your wheels. It might have felt like that. But while Neptune moving out of Pisces in your 12th house gives you this finality that you really have been looking for here. So Neptune moving out of the 12th house for you, you're starting that new beginning finally with Neptune and Aries here, and taking action on some of the things that you really have wanted to in your life, especially in tandem with Saturn in Aries as well. It's like reevaluating what the pre-existing structures and authority figures have kind of instilled on us in our collective life and also individually, and seeing what is in alignment and what isn't. A lot of the times too, when you have these outer planets in the sign of Aries, it can be a lot of political reformation here, a lot of things around like gun laws or anything like physical, anything that could be involved with aggression, because Mars is the ruler of Aries. So maybe also it's like, could be how you handle your energy, how you handle your aggression, and how you move through some of those more challenging emotions that may come up for you. When Aries is in the first house, there's a potential for visionary ideas about your identity too. You might find that you really just want to change things up that you have been doing for yourself for a long time. It could be like physically, like you want to change your physical appearance, or sometimes that can mean like surgeries and things as well, to kind of restructure your physical body. Or maybe you want to take action into creating a body that's in more alignment with you, a body that has more energy, like working out, going to the gym, taking initiative of your personal health. When Neptune goes retrograde again and enters Pisces, there is going to be a reassessment for your spiritual beliefs and practices here. So allow that to come through. If you have any questions around what your spiritual beliefs and practices are while Neptune is retrograded in Pisces, then it's a good time to do it. And it's not because you did anything wrong. It's just the natural kind of cycle of things, you know, and it's okay to kind of be a little bit more internal and reflexive during that time. All righty. We do have Jupiter entering Cancer, which means that it's going to be hitting your 4th house, which is an expansion in your home and family life. It's an opportunity to move, renovate, or deepen family bonds. So a lot of what you'll see Jupiter doing here as it is moving into the sign of Cancer, and this is going to be for all signs, is it kind of is going to sweep away a lot of the problems or aggression that happened in your house of Cancer here, because it's kind of giving that abundance and that optimism. So if you're feeling a little bit down or low energy, or just even like a little disheartened with this Mars retrograde, especially as it's stationed in Cancer, come June, you will have an opportunity to kind of have a little bit more abundance and optimism surrounding your 4th house when Jupiter does enter Cancer here. Uranus is going to be entering Gemini, and this will be impacting your 3rd house here, which is really the potential for innovation in communication, technology, and local activities. And you may embrace unconventional ideas or learning paths here as well. So there's really an opportunity to do something differently. And I feel like especially for business owners here, so if you have an Aries rising and you're a business owner, it's really like leaning into the gifts of technology that we have available to us to make our daily life a lot easier too, because your South Node is being hit in the 6th house, which is, of course, your daily life activities and routines. So leaning into this Uranian energy of change and transformation, not in the Plutonian way, but just in like the sudden innovation and growth. Leaning into that for your betterment is going to be a good tactic to use for the next 7 years so that you can just make your life a little bit easier. And I will say too, I feel like I went over Jupiter a little bit quickly here. So just to add on to Jupiter entering your 4th house here, this could also see a lot of innovation, transformation within your foundations and root structures here. So any of those like difficult core beliefs that maybe you've had a hard time extricating from your personhood, you have the opportunity to really like plant new seeds for yourself to grow later, which I think is really nice as well. Okay, so that is going to be Aries rising. For Taurus rising, our Mars retrograde is going to be hitting you in your 3rd house. Cancer is going to be in, Mars and Cancer is going to be in your 3rd house, which could indicate that maybe you have like a disconnect with family, with your cousins, with your siblings specifically. It's like maybe you guys are going and growing off into different directions, or there's like a disconnect in the people that you are now. Maybe you're actually coming to terms with the fact that you guys are kind of growing apart a little bit, or like there needs to be some distance in order for you to do your own growth and spiritual work, or they need to do theirs, and maybe you guys will come back together at a later time. But right now there's like this like pushing and pulling energy here while Mars is in Cancer in your 3rd house. The 3rd house deals very heavily in siblings and neighbors as a focus here as well. Cousins, any extended family, or anyone that is kind of in your like local network. These people can all be impacted here. So it could even also just be like somebody that you're maybe in business with, or coworkers. You have like this push and pull dynamic between those kind of people in your life, and maybe it's almost like you keep skipping over your words, or you aren't articulating yourself clearly, or someone else misunderstands you. There's that energy here while Mars is retrograde in Cancer in your 3rd house. The other thing here too is that people may say things that they don't necessarily mean during this time, or they might lean into a little bit more of verbal manipulation with you guys, or vice versa. Maybe you're not being completely transparent with others in your community. So definitely slow down and allow yourself to consciously choose your words and articulate yourself in a way that feels very clear and concise to you. And even if you are doing that, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is going to understand you, because we're all human and we make mistakes, right? But trying your best to, Mars is retrograded in Cancer in your 3rd house. And then once it goes direct, you are going to have a little bit more clarity on how to do that. So it might be like towards the beginning of the year, there's like a little bit of like almost like fumbling communication or fumbling these connections, or it might feel that way. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's forever or permanent, but once it goes direct, this energy is going to be a little bit easier for you to manage. For Taurus rising, we have your North Node in Pisces is going to be, the North Node in Pisces is going to be impacting your 11th house, and the South Node in Virgo is going to be impacting your 5th house. So with it hitting your 11th house here, this honestly could be a really good thing for you guys. If those of you that may have struggled with friendships or connections or relationships for the last few years, while it's in the 11th house here, there's a potential for a lot of change and growth and expansion. The 11th house is the ruler of friendship. It's also the ruler, it also has dominion over groups, collective, friendship, just group activities, the collective, like the hive mind approach to things, I guess. So you could very much, like I said, either find yourself coming into new friendships or reflecting on the friendships that maybe are no longer serving you and stripping those old ones away to make space for new ones. With the South Node in Virgo in the 5th house, there's like this call to really let go of like an overcritical approach to creativity or romantic pursuits. You don't have to be perfect, okay? There is a need to just allow yourself to play and to have fun and to not be so so particular with things, you know? And a lot of the times when Taurus risings or people with prominent Taurus placements, when they mess up or they feel like they're not doing things right, they internalize it very severely. So they feel like something is inherently wrong with them. But that's the exact opposite of what we want with the South Node in Virgo in the 5th, because the 5th house is like that inner child energy. It's about playing and expanding and having fun and being that little kid that you've always known that you have been, you know, like reintroducing yourself to this fun childlike energy. So there can be a sense of mastery and play that happen in tandem together. That's kind of what I'm getting with Virgo in the 5th house here in your South Node. Yes. Also, just as a addition to the North Node being in Pisces in your 11th house, there may be a focus shift to involve yourself with communities or plan for like these long-term goals. It could also be an indication that you want to speak spiritual connection within groups. I mean, you're kind of here with FlavoredVivid now, so you're already on the right path there. But you might, you know, be seeking something a little bit more fulfilling for you, spiritually fulfilling. When Venus enters its retrograde, it is going to be hitting your 12th house while it's in Aries, and then it's going to be retrograding into your 11th house as it enters Pisces again. When in your 12th house here, it's about addressing fears or attachments that may have blocked your personal growth. Ending any subconscious patterns or programming that may still be impacting relationships that you have now and stripping those things away. And when it goes back into your 11th house, it's about rethinking friendship and how they align with your aspirations. So a little bit of that energy that we get with the North Node here as well. That Venus retrograde is going to be acting in tandem with that North Node. So really pay attention to who shows up for you this year, and vice versa. Maybe you haven't been showing up for people that have been important in your life. So reevaluating, rethinking what friendships are and aren't for you, or what relationships are and aren't for you. Maybe you've been in a bad relationship that you need to strip away and do something different for. All right. Saturn and Neptune will both enter in your 12th house when it's in Aries, and then when the retrograde goes back, it's also going to be hitting your 11th house while these planets are in Pisces. When Saturn is in your 12th house in Aries, it's about going over discipline in spiritual and karmic matters and letting go of outdated mental or emotional baggage here. Letting go of anything that you've been holding on to, and especially for Taurus, that can be a difficult thing because you're such a practical, grounded sign, a very rooted sign. So sometimes there's a level of control that you want to like seize over things. But this is really a lesson for you to let go of those things, to be able to surrender, fall into that surrender, that spiritual surrender, so you can operate in more of the Venusian energy that you're natively drawn to versus the practical, grounded side of it. Not saying that you shouldn't be grounded, just saying that you can have both of these things work together instead of against each other. When Saturn is going in your 11th house, it's about building strong, meaningful connections with groups or networks here. So you got your 11th house heavily highlighted here to bring in stronger connections and a support system for you if you felt like you've been alone, or that you've been doing everything in spite of the backlash of other people. You have this opportunity in 2025 to really start the foundation of building a good support system for yourself. When Neptune is in your 12th house, it's also an indication of a deep spiritual awakening. with spiritual awakening, sometimes there can be a lot of confusion and lack of clarity around your spiritual identity too, especially when Neptune is involved, because Neptune, like I said earlier, it ties into deceit and illusions, and there can be like this, I don't know, like this veil of delusion, you know, about you when Neptune is impacting any of your houses. You know, when Neptune is in any of these ones, it's very hard to see things clearly. And in such like an etheric house as the 12th, which is the 12th house is Piscean energy anyways, which Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. So there's just like this extra lack of physicality in the 12th house here. So really slowing down, and I would definitely lean in towards meditation and talking with your spirit guides, your team, God, source, the universe, whatever it is that you believe in, to try and like lock in that clarity as you may be kind of going through a little bit of this spiritual awakening, and you are likely to just be kind of starting a huge spiritual awakening here. Because Neptune is going to be in your 12th house for the next 14 years. You have had a lot of 12th house placements in 2024 as well, so I feel like those were like little precursors to kind of what this Neptune transit is going to be for you. But that is what we have while Neptune is in your 12th house. When it retrogrades back into your 11th house, it's really about aligning your dreams and social aspirations with realistic expectations, which can be difficult when we're dealing with Neptune, like the realistic part of things. But because Taurus has a better perspective of the long game than a lot of other signs, I feel like it's definitely within your capabilities of doing. When Jupiter enters Cancer, that's going to be entering your 3rd house here, moving from your second house of finances into your 3rd house of communication, which gives you really this beautiful opportunity. We're in Taurus right now, Taurus rising. We have this beautiful opportunity to really grow in our communication and our writing style. Also a great potential for short distance travel. So if you want to like jump state to state, or even if you're in Europe, like I would say short distance travel can sometimes even be between country and country, depending on where you're at. A lot of that short distance travel could be very beneficial while Jupiter is in your 3rd house. There's an opportunity to also expand your knowledge and to kind of soak things up like a sponge, which is really nice. And Jupiter is going to be sweeping over, like I said, in Aries rising. It's going to be sweeping over a little bit of that Mars and Cancer energy, anything that feels muddled or unfinished, or like there may still be conflict or tension there. Jupiter is coming in to sweep these things up and kind of make nice and tidy for you as well. So any of those communication blocks or errors or, you know, happenings that you may have had with siblings, you might have the opportunity to reconcile or to grow past some of the things that had happened while Jupiter was in, while Mars was in Cancer. Uranus is going to be entering Gemini about midway through the year, and that is going to be impacting your 2nd house here. Gemini in your 2nd house indicates financial independence becoming a priority, and potentially also having unconventional sources of income when Uranus is involved, because Uranus never does things on the beaten path. So there may be like this call for you to follow a new career path, or the way that you make money may need to change to be more in alignment with who you are. Maybe you've been going through and following the way mom and pop have told you to make money, or how you need to make money, and those things need to change and adapt and grow past what they are now. So this is going to be the beginning of that. And of course, there's probably going to be a lot of triggers for Taurus rising specifically, because Taurus does rule over the 2nd house, and possessions and the 5 senses are very tied to a Taurus rising self-identity. So be patient with yourself while Uranus is in your 2nd house. It is going to be a longer transit, so you know how to ride it out better than most. And you did just have Uranus transiting your first house for the last 7 years. So if you can do it through your first house, I believe in you guys, and you can do it through the second. Okay. I'm going to try and push through these a little bit faster because we're already 35 minutes in, and we are only on Gemini. So for Gemini risings, we do have Mars in Cancer impacting your second house, which is about reevaluating your values and financial habits. Yes, it's reevaluating your values and financial habits here. Kind of everything that we said in Taurus is applicable here. You may have a little bit more aggression or frustration around financial issues when it's in a retrograde, just because Mars is the ruler of war and aggression. Your North Node, when the North Node is entering Pisces, it's going to be hitting your 10th house of career. So there could be rapid changes and growth in your career path, or you might finally be brave enough to take that career shift that you have known that you've wanted to take but have kind of been holding back from. On the other side of that, the South Node is in Virgo in your 4th house. So it's also like balancing that career and home life here, your public image from your personal life, and knowing when to oscillate between one and the other here. And also knowing that, especially if you're doing a career change and you're changing fields very what feels like suddenly, to not be a perfectionist when it comes to your home. Like it's really hard to balance up your public image and your personal life in like perfect balance. So if one thing falls to the wayside, just try and course correct as best you can, but don't vilify yourself because of that, okay? There is a call when Virgo is in the 4th house in your South Node to release over control of family or home dynamics and kind of just let things kind of move naturally. You can't control everything. Okay, with the Venus retrograde for you guys, it's going to be moving from Aries in your 11th house of friends into the 10th house of career. And that is rethinking, once again, professional relationships and public perception. So tying into that North Node here, where are you finding the most fulfillment out of a career path? You know, are the people that are in your corner, are they actually in your corner? Have there been potentially maybe some subconscious, or not subconscious, but underhanded tactics or sabotage that you may have dealt with throughout your career path? You know, maybe there's a need to kind of like pull back your energy from some of the people that you thought were aligned with you that maybe they actually aren't. Okay. With Neptune, we have Neptune is going to be starting its retrograde in Aries in your 11th house of friendships, and then it's going to retrograde back into Pisces in your 10th house here, in the same way that Saturn is going to be going from your 11th house to your 10th house. So when Saturn is in your 11th house, it's really about building meaningful connections in your social life and potentially using those connections to help propel you into a new career path, since you do have this 10th house focus here. Restructuring your career goals and aligning with deeper values for you. So this like 11th and 10th house switch here is like finding the support that you potentially need in order to propel you forward in what's more aligned with you. So you might meet new people or be introduced to new people that are more in alignment with what is meant to be your sole purpose or career path here. With Neptune in the 11th and 10th here, it's also an opportunity to dream big about social contributions, but make sure that you're grounded in this so that you don't like get all up in the stars, right? When Neptune is going to be in your 10th house, it's just doubling down and really clarifying career aspirations, and to make sure that you're avoiding illusions about success. So being grounded and having this clarity that, you know, may have been a little bit difficult because Neptune has been in your 10th house for such a long time. So it may have felt like you were spinning your wheels in your career path while Neptune had been in the 10th house. But the plus side is it's moving out of the 10th into the 11th for you guys for this foreseeable future, but you will have a little bit of that back and forth energy here in 2025 as well. Jupiter is going to be entering Cancer this year for you guys, which will be impacting your second house, which will be a nice little reprieve from you kind of dipping your toes into maybe like the financial uncertainty that you guys might have, especially at that Mars retrograde in Cancer. So helping to kind of ease into that second house energy for you, Jupiter is going to be coming in. And maybe it could be also too that you get some financial blessings or come into a pitfall of money that you weren't sure was even going to, come. It's about expanding your resources while staying grounded here. So there's really a huge upheaval for Gemini around finances, their career path, and their network. That's what's going to be highlighted energy in 2025. And then when Uranus enters Gemini, that's going to be impacting your first house, which is personal reinvention, embracing your unique individuality and exploring new identities. So maybe like this career shift for you is really going to help you step into this new identity, this new version of yourself that maybe you've been keeping small or keeping hidden for a long time. That is Gemini's for 2025. And if you want a more personal reading, you can always book one for me. I realized I was pretty long-winded for the first couple, so I'm going to be trying to be a little bit more concise here with the rest of them. But if you want a more in-depth reading, like I said, you can always book on FlavoredVivid.com. For Cancer risings, the Mars retrograde is impacting your beautiful first house of self. So if you feel like your energy levels are wonky, if you don't have any energy for anything, that is very normal because Mars does roll over your energy levels. And in a retrograde, it's like, I have no energy for anything. I want to stay in my bed all day, watch Netflix, and, if you know, you know. So it's also a good time to reevaluate where you maybe have been like a people pleaser or letting people walk all over you. Like make sure that you're asserting your assert my authority and realign your personal goals to be in alignment with that. The North Node, once it enters Pisces, is going to be in your 9th house, which is very beautiful, all about growth and expansion and optimism, which I love. When Pisces in the 9th house, it's expanding spiritually and philosophically. And these perspectives are going to be very key in order for you to get through the next year. It's also seeking meaningful travel or higher education. Some of my Cancer risings, maybe you want to be going back to school or starting your own spiritual business. Maybe you want to teach others or integrate what you've learned and, help others do the same thing. When the South Node is in Virgo, it's going to be hitting your 3rd house here, which is letting go of perfectionism and communication or overanalyzing daily interactions. So don't go into like thought loops and patterns with the people that you're talking about. And most of the time, like when you're in thought loops and patterns over little shiz that happened, like no one else even cares. So just let it go. Around March, we have the Venus retrograde, and that's going to be going from Aries in your 10th house of work, career, and social life, social recognition, into your 9th house. So it's going to be retrograding into your 9th house of personal beliefs, expansion. So there may be this call during the first half of the retrograde to really, during the second half of the retrograde to really reassess your beliefs and long-term visions, and making sure that romantic relationships, first of all, have a spiritual dimension to them, and also that they're in alignment with who you are now. In the 10th house, at the first part of the retrograde, we have this call to really rethink professional relationships and what your public image is. So there may be like this call to integrate more spirituality into how the public views you. And also to just take a more spiritual approach to your business and your career path. We do have both Saturn and Neptune starting in your 10th house when it enters Aries and then goes into a retrograde. And when Saturn is in your 10th house, there is a focus on professional discipline. There is an ability, of course, to integrate spirituality while still being disciplined in what your practice is. Taking a mature approach to leadership and responsibility is also going to be highlighted when Aries is in your 10th house. It's also for Cancer rising. It would be a good time to start a business if you haven't started a business yet, and if you want to start a business. When it retrogrades into your 9th house, it's reevaluating your educational, spiritual, or travel pursuits. Are the things that you learn still in alignment with you? Or do you need to go and reassess and relearn other things, or learn new things to expand your ideology? You know, where are you? It's reevaluating yourself intellectually, spiritually, and what your travel pursuits are, like I said. When Neptune is in your 10th house, there of course is this call to really dream big for your career, but just be careful to avoid illusions or overpromising things that you can't actually commit to. And when Neptune moves back into your 9th house, it's a reflection of what your spiritual truths are and aligning them with your life's actual direction. So once Neptune moves out of your 9th house permanently, I feel like there's going to be a lot of clarity around what your spiritual purpose, what your spiritual focus is going to be. We do have Jupiter entering Cancer in 2025 this year, and that's going to be in your 1st house. So just very fortunate and abundant in yourself. It's a period of personal growth, optimism, and expansion. And there's a lot of opportunities for self-improvement and leadership. And then when Uranus enters Gemini, it's going to be impacting your 12th house, which is all about hidden insights and breakthrough in your subconscious mind, and exploring spirituality or potential hidden talents, or even sometimes things that are a little taboo, especially with Uranus in the 12th. 12th house can deal with taboo things similarly to the 8th. And with Uranus too, it's like an unconventional approach to things. So that is nice. That's what we got for Cancers. For Leos here, the Mars retrograde is going to be hitting your 12th house, which is a shift towards introspection, healing, and letting go of past frustrations. A lot of times I've noticed that Leo risings have a hard time being present and not ruminating on things of the past. With the North Node, it's going to be hitting your 8th house this year and for the next 18 months, which is potential for deep transformation through shared resources, intimacy, or psychological growth. The South Node will be in your 2nd house, which is releasing rigid approaches to finances or self-worth here. Leos, my Leo risings, y'all are in for a very big transformation. You are on, I'm not touching on it too much, but just very quickly, you are now in alignment with the Pluto opposed Mars here for like the next 15 years. So that really is just like a transformation for how you take action in this life, and also a potential for you to really dig your heels down and refuse to transform if you're too stubborn. So I feel like this transformation with your North Node in the 8th is coming at a good time, right as you're switching into this axis and having this energy that you haven't experienced yet kind of come to the forefront. With the Venus retrograde, we have it moving from your 9th house while it's in Aries into your 8th house in Pisces. While in the 9th house, it's all about exploring relationships through travel, education, or spiritual connection. So none of the superficial stuff is really going to go for you while we're in this Venus retrograde, and you have a potential to kind of transform how you see connection after Venus goes direct. And once in the 8th house, it's about reevaluating intimate relationships or shared financial agreements. You know, like maybe you need to rework some contracts or take yourself off of a co-sign loan or something of that nature. Saturn and Neptune will both be moving from your 9th house when it is in Aries and retrograde back into the 8th house of Pisces here. With Saturn, that means that there is a need for discipline in education or spiritual pursuits. And sometimes that discipline is just committing to like okay, 10 minutes of meditation a day or whatever it is. There's still a level of discipline necessary for you to do woo-woo things. And then when Saturn enters your 8th house, it's reflecting on boundaries and shared resources and emotional connections as well. When Neptune is in your 9th house, there's an idealistic exploration of beliefs or philosophies, but once again, watch out for over-idealization. And when Neptune moves into your 8th house, there may be a clarity in deep emotional or financial bonds. So you're kind of seeing a little bit how these themes trickle down into each other, and some of the highlighted energy that you guys are going to be having for the foreseeable future here. Jupiter will be entering Cancer in 2025, impacting your 12th house of spiritual growth, and hidden blessings here are likely to emerge. And solitude might bring healing as well, going internal, and instead of seeking validation externally from people around you, really being solid within yourself. That's going to be helpful while Jupiter enters Cancer in your 12th house. Uranus is going to be entering Gemini, which will be impacting your 11th house, which is the potential to innovate friendships or long-term goals. And you could also potentially attract really unconventional social groups and maybe be a part of really out there social groups. So that might be fun. I'm going to refrain for what I was going to say there. With Virgo risings, we have Mars impacting your 11th house, which is a focus on friendship, collaboration, and social contribution here. It can feel like a block while Mars is in retrograde here, so it could feel like people are against you, or you're just, kind of kicking your feet up to no avail. When Jupiter comes through, we are going to sweep through the 11th house again, and there's going to be a lot more abundance and blessings in that same house, and cleaning up what, may have been frustrating towards the beginning of the year. The North Node will be in your 7th house, ruled by Pisces. The South Node will be in your 1st house, ruled by Virgo. And so you're going to kind of see a lot of this Aries, Libra, North Node, South Node energy within your personal life. There's like this oscillation between independence and relationships, and what is important versus what isn't important. It could be kind of like this yo-yo effect where it's like, okay, I learned this thing from my relationship, or like, maybe someone revealed themselves to be untrustworthy, or maybe, you had a very good friend who was trustworthy, and you can kind of integrate that on the other side, whether that be like, okay, well, I need stronger boundaries to cut people out who aren't for me, or maybe I open myself up to connections that are serving me or are for me. With Pisces in the 7th house, there's an emphasis on, like I said, partnerships or relationships, and it's seeking emotional balance and one-on-one connections here. And also just like a little note when you're getting your 1st house impacted, to try and release perfectionistic tendencies in self-presentation. The Venus retrograde is going to be hitting the 8th house for you initially, as Venus is moving through Aries, which is a focus on intimacy, shared resources, and emotional healing. There's also like a need for depth here. There's a need for deep emotional connection when it's in the 8th house. And all of that superficial daily chatter isn't really going to be good enough, for lack of a better term. And then when you move from your 8th house into your 7th house, it's really like reevaluating romantic or business partnerships. So you go really deep while in the 8th house, and it's like kind of like some of the aha moments that you may have brought while it was retrograde in your 8th house, you integrate into your relationships when it hits your 7th house. When Saturn is in Aries, it will start its retrograde back into Pisces, which is going to be hitting that same 8th, 7th axis. The same thing with Neptune. You're both getting hit in the 8th and 7th house here, going from the 8th house into the 7th house. While Saturn is in the 8th house, discipline in managing shared resources or emotional commitment. So a lot of this too, like if you have a partner or like a romantic partner or a business partner, if you guys have shared financial resources or things like that, or shared responsibilities too, or shared spaces even, reevaluating what feels fair to both of you as you've grown and changed, you know, since the start of your guys' connection or relationship. And then it's like you're reevaluating these resources, and then it goes into your 7th house, which is like potentially rebalancing and building those strong balanced partnerships that are necessary for you. And with Neptune here in your 8th house at the same time, it's like an idealistic exploration of emotions or emotional or financial partnership here too. So with this Saturn-Neptune combo, and this will be applicable for everybody moving forward, it's kind of like you have this tandem movement of like stripping away the veil and seeing what's true underneath, because of course Neptune is like the veil and Saturn is like stripping it away. You know, there's like this balance between optimism and realism as it's impacting these same houses. When Neptune hits your 7th house, there could be a clarity in romantic or business partnerships here too. And then we have Jupiter entering Cancer, which will impact your 11th house, which is an expansion in social circles and long-term dreams, and opportunities may also arise through networking for you. And then Uranus, which I'm very excited for Virgos here, Virgo risings, is Uranus is going to be entering Gemini in the 10th house, which there's this potential for innovation in your career or public image. So you may kind of embrace unconventional paths to success. There may be like this call for you to really expand your career path, or just like go against the beaten path, you know, finally stepping into what's more aligned for you instead of operating in fear and, you know, doing things just because you think it's the right path to success, you know, releasing that perfectionistic control as well. And that is for Virgo risings. For Libra risings, we have Mars impacting your 10th house of career. It's focus. This is a focus shift to career growth and public image, and to also work towards your personal achievements and goals. With the North Node, it's going to be transitioning into your 6th house, while your South Node will be entering the 12th house here. The North Node will be about prioritizing spiritual alignment and daily rituals and routines, and also focusing on your personal health. And it's also seeking meaningful work that actually nourishes your soul. Superficial work is not going to feel aligned to you. With the 12th house impacted by the South Node, it's once again releasing that perfectionistic tendencies. And part of doing that too is like you might need to do that internal work and practice a little bit of solitude so that you can kind of quiet some of the external voices and really hear your own voice of what you maybe need to let go of or release control of. You're so cute. Shouldn't have said anything. Okay. With Venus, we have the retrograde starting in the sign of Aries, hitting your 7th house, and then it will oscillate back into your 6th house of Pisces. And while it's in your 7th house, it's of course reassessing relationships and how you assert yourself within them. And when in your 6th house, it's reflecting how you approach self-care and work relationships as well. And also just like how relationships may impact how you treat yourself. Like if you have, come on, stop it. If you have, you know, poor personal relationships? Is it like you sink into like this depression and stop taking care of yourself? You know, do you only take care of yourself when other people are inspiring you or encouraging you to do it? Like, why is it that the external stimuli is what you rely on for your own personal, you know, well-being? Saturn and Neptune will be starting in your 7th house and then hitting your 6th house afterwards. So it's going to be about, you know, dreaming big in your relationships, but maintaining that realistic shared vision basically with other people in your life. Like maybe you know, you are dreaming about a future with another person or like a business partner or a friend. You're trying to create a future together, you know, and it's what realistic steps do y'all need to take in order to maintain that connection and maintain it in a healthy and empowering way while still achieving your goals here? It's building a strong foundation in one-on-one relationships and to kind of like take a serious and balanced approach in your relationships. And that's Neptune and Saturn in tandem, both of those energies here. And then when Saturn and Neptune are impacting your 6th house here, it's about reassessing your spiritual connections and developing a intuitive approach to health and work here too. It's blending the, you know, the realism with the optimism, like I said before. Jupiter is going to be entering your 10th house of career and public image, which is really great. It's a potential to expand career opportunities and public recognition, and it's a great time to shine professionally. And so that's that Jupiter in Cancer is going to be impacting your 10th house, which is going to sweep up the remnants of the Mars retrograde at the beginning of the year. And then we do have Uranus entering Gemini, which will impact your 9th house, which is all about innovation and education, travel, and philosophical pursuits. And to have and approach unconventional ways to broadening your horizons. Traveling to another country or, you know, immersing yourself in another culture could be very beneficial for you to really get a different perspective on life. Boy, I got so much left to do for these signs. I got to figure out how to shorten these next time. All right, so for Scorpio risings here, we have your, the Mars retrograde in Cancer is going to be hitting your 9th house, which is a focus on spiritual, educational, or travel pursuits to gain clarity and direction. It also might feel during the retrograde that you are kind of spinning your wheels or like you can't make traction on some of those areas of life that are important to you, but once it goes direct, you may be able to like go full throttle in the things that you are actually passionate about. The North Node is moving into Pisces, which is going to be hitting your 5th house. The South Node is moving into Virgo, which will be hitting your 11th house. And the fun thing about the North Node in the 5th house is it's very explorative, creative, romantic energy. It's joyful expression, following your intuition towards personal passions, which is very nice for Scorpio risings because y'all can be so dark and serious sometimes. So really having a fun side and playing, leaning into that play and that creativity here. And that intuitive side of you. Very inner child when the 5th house is involved, of course. And when the South Node is in your 11th house, it's letting go of rigid expectations in social groups or in collaboration. Not everyone is going to operate the way that you want them to, especially when you're talking about a collective group of people. So, and of course, the eclipses are going to be impacting these same houses. They will be in the 5th and the 11th house for you, respectively. The Venus retrograde is going to be starting in your 6th house of work, routine, and structure here, which will be potentially reassessing your relationship with work and health routines. And then it is going to be moving into your 5th house in Pisces, which is reflecting on your creativity, romance, and personal joy here. And then when it goes direct, it's going to be hitting those guys direct. So you'll be able to go through the 5th and then the 6th house, respectively, with a new perspective on what those things mean to you. Saturn and Neptune will be starting their retrograde in Aries in the 6th, and then move the retrograde into Pisces in the 5th here, which once again, as we're talking about the 6th house, we're talking on building discipline and habits in your workplace and health when talking about Saturn. For Neptune, it's talking about also having a spiritualized approach to your daily habits and well-being. So that discipline and spirituality melding together, those things are meant to work in tandem here for you guys. And then when it's in your 5th house, it is also how you can restructure creative projects or romantic relationships when Saturn is involved. And then when Neptune is involved, it's reassessing creativity in itself and your emotional vision here. So it's like, how can I add structure to create the bigger vision of things? Jupiter is going to be entering Cancer, which will be in your 9th house, which is an opportunity for travel, education, or spiritual expansion. And these are all things that will be fortuitous and blessed for you all the way through 2026. Uranus is going to be entering Gemini, which will be in your 8th house. So huge transformation around shared resources, intimacy, and psychological insights here. You might be entering your crazy detective era too, with Uranus entering Gemini in the 8th house. You might be have like Nancy Drew energy activated here, but that's a little bit of what we can kind of expect. I will be breaking down these transits down individually as well. I'm thinking, can you stop? And what they mean by themselves a little bit more in depth at a later time. Not now. For Sagittarius risings, we have the Mars retrograde in Cancer will be impacting your 8th house here, which is once again focused on shared resources and also deep emotional healing here. And so you might actually end up in conflict with your partner or whoever you potentially could share resources with, maybe a roommate or something. You might not be seeing eye to eye, and there could be some conflict there that needs to be resolved. And once Mars goes direct, you might have the opportunity to kind of go through and heal some of those sides that have been a little bit more tense while Mars has been retrograde. When the North Node moves into Pisces, that will be impacting your 4th house. The South Node will be in Virgo, which will be in your 10th house, so the opposite side of these axes here. And when Pisces is in the 4th house, it's really about prioritizing emotional and spiritual growth, both at home and also within yourself. And when Virgo is in your 10th house, it's releasing overcritical approaches to career and your public image. Once again, like I also said on the same axis before, it was like because you're kind of focusing a little bit more internally and on your home life and on yourself, not to criticize like the impact that may have on your career path, because sometimes when you're rebalancing things and healing one thing and focusing on one thing, the other thing, isn't in the focal point. So sometimes there's like it goes like that teeter-totter motion where it's like focusing here and the other one lifts, or vice versa, if that makes sense. With the Venus retrograde, it is going to be starting in the sign of Aries in the 5th house here, and then move into Pisces in the 4th. When in the 5th house, it's reassessing creative pursuits and romantic relationships again. And then in the 4th house, it is reflecting on family dynamics and emotional security. So sometimes that means too that like, this could even mean too, like your inner child gets triggered in something, like maybe you have a little tizzy or something with your family, or like those deep inner child triggers get spurred up for you to reassess if the people that you're in relationship to are for you, or if maybe it just was brought up for you so that you can heal and integrate it and move past some of those old triggers. There's a lot of inner child stuff going on here for you this year, Sagittarius, because your fifth and fourth house are getting impacted the most. Saturn and Neptune will both be starting their retrograde in the fifth house in Aries and then move into the fourth house of Pisces. When Saturn is in your fifth house, it's all about discipline and creative or romantic endeavors, creating that structure for yourself. And then with Neptune involved, it's leaning more onto the inspirational side here of it, and to allow your passions to kind of push you forward in what it is that you want to create, or maybe it can be too starting a romantic connection with someone else, or even like a romantic project. Like, for whatever reason, I was thinking of like a rom-com movie or something. I don't know if anyone is into creating movies or that sort of thing, but that's what popped into my head. But also like maintaining that Saturnian, like, grounded approach to things, so that you can lean into the inspiration but have the foundation already like established, so that you know kind of where to move and how to like basically turn your passions into life, like not just keeping it in your mind and actually creating something physical that you can be proud of. When Neptune is in your fourth house, it's realigning emotional securities with your spiritual truth. And with Saturn impacting your fourth house, it's all about restructuring your emotional foundation and family life. So kind of what we already talked about during the Venus retrograde. That's just highlighted here with Saturn and Neptune. Jupiter is going to be entering Cancer in your eighth house, which is financial growth through partnerships or shared resources. So if you already kind of restructured your shared resources earlier throughout the year, then you could kind of see some of the fruits of your labor later and all the way up until 2026. Uranus is going to be entering Gemini, which will be hitting your seventh house, which is revolutionary changes in partnership and embracing unconventional relationships. So it could also be you go through a lot of just interesting connections throughout the next 7 years of your life. And they could have just a huge impact on how you view yourself and your personhood. Okay. Capricorn risings here. The Mars retrograde is going to be going to be entering Cancer in your seventh house, which is a focus on partnerships and working on open communication and harmony in relationships. That can sometimes mean that you will be experiencing conflict before you have the harmony, especially when in a retrograde. The North Node will be in Pisces this year, impacting your third house. The South Node will be in Virgo, impacting your ninth house. With the North Node in your third house, it's all about embracing intuitive and creative communication and focus on connecting with others meaningfully. This could also be with your North Node in Pisces in the third. It can literally be like talking to your ancestors or spirit communication, or higher planes of communication there. With your South Node in Virgo in the ninth, it could be letting go of structured beliefs or rigid approaches to education and travel. It could also be you letting go how you feel like you need to grow or expand. Like, there doesn't need to be any blueprint for your own personal growth. And sometimes when you're growing, it looks like, it can feel like you're failing, but really you're moving forward, like growth isn't just like a straight up escalator, it's got a lot of ridges and ups and downs along the way, and that's okay. The Venus retrograde will be starting in Aries in the fourth house and then enter Pisces in the third before it returns direct. And while in the fourth, of course, it's reassessing home dynamics and emotional security. And when it hits your third, it's reflecting on communication patterns and relationships, especially with siblings or neighbors. Saturn and Neptune will be starting their retrograde in Aries in the 4th and go all the way into the 3rd house of Pisces. While in the 4th house, it's that balance between, once again, dreaming big and finding a foundation in your home life. So maybe it's like, while you're rebuilding the foundation of your home, you're still having like this optimism and the vision of like what new seeds you want to plant for your home life. And that could also be like moving to a new place. It could be other people moving into your house. It can be, you know, your own personal beliefs and value systems too, as well, that were instilled in you from childhood or from your family. It could be stripping people away that are in your family that no longer serve you or aren't in alignment with you. And then when it's in your 3rd house, it is all focusing on really articulating yourself clearly, communicating clearly, and also learning how to connect, how to verbalize yourself with others, and also have that spiritual connection like I talked about. When Neptune is in the 3rd too, it's literal, like I said, spirit communication. So listening to the downloads and the intuitive nudges that you're kind of getting from source and being able to articulate and communicate that to people physically in this realm. Jupiter is going to be entering Cancer in your 7th house, which is expansion in partnerships and relationships, and it's a great time for collaboration or meeting significant others here too. Very, very good time with with Jupiter in the 7th house, which is a nice thing. Uranus will be entering Gemini in your 6th house here, which is an innovation into work, daily routines, or health, and exploring unconventional methods for self-care. Also for that, talk to your spirit guides and team. That could be a method of self-care for you as well. With Aquarius rising here, we have the Mars retrograde and Cancer entering your 6th house, which is a focus shift to work and health routines and channeling your energy into organization and your well-being, basically. When retrograde, of course, there can be roadblocks there, or feel like you don't really know how to take agency or action into your health and routine. When direct, you might have that perspective of, the aha moment of, I know what to do. I know how to implement some changes that are going to work for me. The North Node will be impacting your 2nd house. The South Node will be in your 8th house this year. So there's going to be a definite focus on finding your own spiritual alignment with your values and finances, aligning your personhood with a value structure that is going to help you really maintain the finances that you would like to have, or change so that you're gaining more financially, or really trusting your intuition when it comes to your resources. With it being in the 8th house, it's also releasing control and perfectionism around shared finances or deep emotional bonds here. Whoop. I gotta wrap this up too. My phone is dying, even though I have it plugged in. Don't know why it's doing that. But there's this oscillation too between like potentially relying on shared resources and then like maintaining your own. So I don't know if it's like, some of you might deal with people siphoning your finances or trying to use your finances as their own, or you need to create solid boundaries and structure so that other people don't use your finances, or maybe you've been taking advantage of other people's finances, that sort of thing here. There's like a push and pull focus here. So if it's been out of alignment prior to this, you have the opportunity to really put yourself in alignment and set yourself right financially. And there can be really sudden changes, of course, with the North Node and South Node and it being on this eclipse axis. So just be patient with yourself as you go through those things. And know that you didn't do anything wrong if you do encounter some ups and downs financially. The Venus retrograde is going to be starting in your 3rd house in Aries and then move back into your 2nd house in Pisces. So I feel like this is really tied to kind of like that North Node, South Node axis for you, where it's like going to be really important for you to communicate what your needs are, especially financially, to other people and people that you may be in relationship to, as far as like for your own financial health. And then when it goes back into your second house, that's going to be even more highlighted. And there might be like this tie too, where it's like the finances that you make are really closely tied to your sense of self-worth. How much money you make doesn't mean that you're any better of a person than somebody who makes less money than you. If you make, $400 million a year, does that make you a better person? I don't think so. I've seen a lot of millionaires and billionaires say some truly atrocious things, and I would never want to associate myself with those people. And some of the most kind and generous people that I've ever met have been people that have barely had 2 pennies to rub together, So reassessing your financial health, well-being, and how dependent or independent you've been financially. Same story here with Saturn and Neptune. Maybe for some of you, while your third house has been impacted, maybe you haven't been communicating what your needs have been financially, or just like the way that you've been articulating. Maybe you've been like trying to like skirt around the issues instead of being transparent about what it is that you've really needed. And so there's like really this highlighted energy of like, well, if you don't communicate what your needs are and what you expect of people, then people aren't going to be able to fulfill those things. And so when these signs retrograde back into your second house, there's this opportunity to really create like a financial plan for yourself and align yourself with something that is actually going to serve you here. And maybe too, it's been like that you've just been avoidant with your finances. You haven't been wanting to look at it. Like you'd be one of those people like, yeah, I open up my bank app like once every 2 months, and it's like, you can't have this fear around them. You can't let that fear run your life. Otherwise you'll never be able to make like a conscious choice there of what you want to do. But there is like a very highlighted energy of, because all these second house transits are happening in Pisces, it's like having that spiritual approach to your finances. And two, maybe it's like for some of you, it might be like some kind of spiritual inheritance that you have. Hi, Steph, good to see you. On the plus side here, we do have Jupiter entering Cancer in your 6th house, which is really shining abundance and light down on your work and health routines. So your physical health could really take a really good turn, or you put in the energy to make your physical health a good thing. There's an opportunity to really improve your well-being and to find meaningful work. So maybe that's why you also are having all of this second house influence for, the coming years, is because you do have like this beautiful blessing from Jupiter where you have the potential to find something that's a little bit more meaningful to you work-wise. And then Uranus is going to be entering Gemini, which will be orbiting into your 5th house, which is of course creativity and romantic life. And these things might take an unconventional turn here, and there may be this level of experimentation with self-expression, or you might find like a really weird unconventional art style that you want to explore, or just a different way of connecting to your inner child, and just doing things a little bit differently that are more in alignment with you, even if people call you weird for doing it. And that will be for the next 7 years. And for Pisces risings, last but not least, you have the Cancer, Mars in Cancer retrograde is going to be hitting your 5th house, which is a focus on creative projects, romance, and self-expression here. You could feel stifled in this energy when it's retrograde, and then once direct, you can feel re-inspired to, channel energy into joyful pursuits. The North Node is going to be hitting your ascendant, your 1st house. Your South Node will be hitting your descendant, your 7th house. So there's going to be an opportunity for your North Node to embrace personal growth and self-discovery, and to focus on authenticity and aligning with your spiritual truth and path here. With the 7th house being impacted by Virgo, it's not trying to control your relationship so much, not trying to micromanage people, and potentially also to draw good boundaries with people, because a lot of times with that Virgo Pisces axis, there's a hard time to draw boundaries with people when necessary. So make sure that you're standing up for yourself and that you're not like people pleasing your way through your connections. And with the Venus retrograde here, it's going to be starting in your second house in Aries and then go back into your first house in Pisces. When in your second house, it's reevaluating your approach to finances and self-worth. That's the common theme here when in the second house. And while in the first, it's also reflecting on how you present yourself and how you give yourself self-love and nurturance. So there may be like this worth wound initially where it's like you don't feel good enough, you don't feel worthy of things. And when it transitions into your first house, you kind of have a little bit more of that energy of like the worth wound coming to the forefront. But it's like, what am I going to do to change this? What am I going to do to, excuse you, what am I going to do to give myself the love and nurturance that I need, you know, instead of focusing on getting it. Hey, come here, your heckles all the time, come here, stop it. Sorry. All right. And of course we have Saturn and Neptune. It is going to be starting their retrograde in your second house while in the sign of Aries, and then enter your first house when it returns into Pisces. So once again here, there is this kind of like, I feel like more so than the finances side of this, it's like that worth wound that is coming to the forefront. So like really working on building up your self-esteem and creating like an actionable plan potentially for you, or exploring different ways to like really align yourself with you know, a new value system that is just a little bit different than what you've done in the past, you know, creating the structure for yourself that is necessary to build a better sense of self-esteem and self-worth, and know that any kind of internalization around your personal worth is likely to be an illusion. So don't allow yourself to vilify yourself or to think that you're evil or bad or wrong, especially because Neptune has been in your first house for so long. So it might have been that you a lot of the times have like taken the blame a lot for other people, or you know, other people maybe have had a hard time owning up to how they've treated you. So it's always come back on you because that's the only way that you've been able to move through this energy. But there's this calling for you to really take back your sense of self-worth and embody this higher vibration as you're moving through 2025. And as you have, once again, kind of like that highlighted energy in the second house, it's going to move back into your first house, which gives you also the opportunity to really reconnect with your dreams and personal identity. And, you know, you have like this blip of being in Aries where it's like, oh, I can kind of see clearly when it's direct in Aries before it hits that retrograde stage. So it's like, okay, how am I going to take what I kind of learned as it moved into a new sign and integrate it in those last little lessons that you have of Neptune and Saturn both being in Pisces. And also just give yourself, like, pat yourself on the back for what you've been through. And there's like an opportunity to really reflect on like the self-growth that you've kind of pushed through in spite of people kind of trying to undermine you and throw you under the bus for whatever reason, I feel like. Jupiter will be entering Cancer in your fifth house, which is really nice. So you have this potential to really expand into creative pursuits, romance and joy, to play and have fun, explore different hobbies and self-expression. So you're really getting this fifth house energy of like, you know, exploration and self-discovery after having so much clouded judgment all around your first house with Neptune in your first house and Saturn impacting your first house also. So you get this really nice Jupiter transit right after, kind of having potentially a a difficult time for the previous years. And finally, you have Uranus entering Gemini, which will be in your 4th house, which could lead to unexpected changes in your home or family life. And it calls for you to embrace flexibility and innovation in your domestic environments. So there could be like a huge move or change, or maybe you take yourself away from whatever family you had before. Maybe you start a new family for yourself. Like there's a lot of opportunity for potential change and growth and expansion within the 4th house there for you guys as well. Yeah, so that is all. Oh, also maybe it could be connecting with family via like technology and things, since Uranus does rule over technology. So maybe long distance, maybe you connect again with like long distance relatives or something of that sort within the next 7 years. Yeah. Alrighty, so that is what I have for you. I'm going to try and work on being a little bit more concise with these readings in the future, because we're like at an hour and a half. But thank you for those of you that have watched. If y'all have any, ideas for videos in the future, feel free to comment down below. I appreciate you guys. If you want to do birth chart readings or anything like that, FlavoredVivid.com. I'd be happy to look over your birth chart and give you something a little bit more personalized instead of something so broad. I appreciate you guys. Hi, Kitty. Good seeing you. It was fun having your reading yesterday, too. I appreciate you guys. Have a good one.